Hurry up, please.
Hello?
Your eyes to me.
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome or welcome back to Case Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing, incredibly supportive Case family by hitting subscribe and turning on notifications. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. Our love and respect goes out to all those that knew and loved Christina and all those affected by this dark case. Christina Abbots was born on May 25, 1989 in the West Midlands. She later moved to London and was described as loving, caring, and a loyal family member and friend. She was described by her family as petite, happy, and well educated. Her educational journey took her to the Royal Agricultural College in Cirencester, and then later to Oxford Brookes University. She presented herself as an IT consultant in the city. In truth, however, she maintained a secret identity as an escort. She operated under the alias Tilly Pexton, charging a staggering £2,000 per session. Her services were advertised online, and she met clients in upscale London hotels, as well as a rented flat in Crawley in West Sussex. Friend Howard Joseph, an airline pilot, described Christina as a sociable and personable woman, someone who embraced life to the fullest. She was often travelling, drinking, and partying. Her job allowed her to socialise with a wealthy circle of friends, indulging in high-end experiences like fine dining, and attending high-end events such as Royal Ascot and polo matches. Christina's parents remained unaware of their daughter's actual profession, but they did know about her association with an upper-class social set and about her frequent travels. At one point in her career, Christina Abbots crossed paths with Zahid Nassim. He was an employee of the Toronto Dominion Bank through an online platform. Nassim met Abbots on 3 occasions over a 6-week period. This was usually in hotels and restaurants in London. Nassim would pay her approximately £3,500 each time. He described their relationship as commercial but very intimate. He also gave approximately £2,000 to the friend for whom Abbots was house-sitting, and he actively looked for websites so he could rate her performance as an escort. In one conversation with a friend, he said, "Luckily, I'm here to protect her from harm and the sick perverts out there. I don't want to break her." Hailing from Amersham, Buckinghamshire, Nassim began hiring escorts when his once thriving relationship with his partner eventually lost its spark and they drifted apart. Despite maintaining a successful career, Nassim was fired from his last job at Aberdeen Asset Management due to a substantial £20,000 entertaining expense. Nassim, a father of 2, despite his £250,000 salary, somehow had amassed significant debts. For nearly a decade, he frequently paid for escorts. He indulged in near-daily drinking, and he was a user of stimulants. Nassim attributed his high-stress job, which had taken him to New York whilst working for Merrill Lynch, as the source of his stress. It was on one of those stressful days when he decided to text Christina. On her birthday, May 25th, Christina had arranged for a celebration with friends at the Park Plaza Hotel. This was situated at County Hall in London. However, on the eve of her birthday, she got a text from Nassim who asked to meet her. So, on the evening of May 24th, Nassim met Christina in Crawley, West Sussex, and they went on to spend the night together. After taking a taxi from his Amersham residence, the two were captured in an Asda supermarket aisle. There, Nassim was seen kissing her on the forehead. In the shop, they bought her favourite brand of champagne, Veuve Clicquot. Only a few hours later, he messaged his estranged partner, Helen Jarvis, with the words, "It's too late. I'm sorry. Life isn't going to work out for me." Helen's immediate response was, "What have you done?" She attempted to call him but received no answer. The following day, Christina received birthday wishes from friends and family via text message. However, strangely, she did not respond to any of them. She also did not make an appearance at her own party, an event she was very much looking forward to. Growing concerned, her friend Roshan drove from London to her apartment at 11 p.m. When he couldn't get a response at the door, he called the police.
Thank you. There's someone else here. Yeah, there's someone else in here. Berkey, got another person in here.
Another person in here?
Another person in here.
Is it breathing? No. Knife over for Whiskey 01. Okay, so what's section to 6 in the building?
There's a knife on there, like joint.
Hang on, his eyes are flickering. What? No. His eyes are flickering. Hello? Hello? Hello?
I think it's the bulb in the light, mate.
No, his
eyes are flickering.
Ambulance, please.
Ambulance on the...
What do you want me to do with that? Because obviously...
It's fine, leave it where it is. Mate, can you hear me?
On the hurry up, please.
Hello?
Open your eyes to me.
2 officers promptly arrived and then forced their way into the top floor apartment at 2:30 a.m. Christina's friend, waiting downstairs, sensed the gravity of the situation from the expressions on the officers' faces. They found Christina's lifeless body inside the flat. In addition, Nassim was discovered in the living room, seemingly unconscious. He was wearing only a dressing gown. Surrounding him were partially consumed glasses of alcohol. This was along with illicit substance-related paraphernalia.
Hello, mate. Good go in here, one. Fantastic.
I tried to get him to like wiggle his fingers or his toes or any part of his body, but obviously no response. Flickering. That's how we actually thought he was deceased initially, but on putting torchlight on his eyes, they were flickering.
Come on, mate, you can hear me. Wakey! Come on, you can hear me, I know you can hear me.
Yeah.
There's only a section number on the call time. I need to give you... GCS is 7th, isn't it? Yeah. Because 1, 1 and 5. But eyes are occasionally open. Because of the circumstances leading to you being here at the hospital, okay, you are at this time under arrest on suspicion of murder. Okay, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later find in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence.
At first, paramedics suspected Nassim of play acting, but he regained consciousness after being transported to the hospital. Later, during a police interview, he claimed to have no recollection of what had happened with Christina Abbott.
Did you at any time think to call for help?
I did.
Tell me about that.
I did, and I was just, well, what the hell happens next?
Sorry, Zaid, when you say you did...
No, I said I did think about it.
Okay.
And then I thought, well, what the hell's going to happen next? I can't see anything positive coming out of any of this.
Did it not cross your mind that they, ambulance may have been able to assist her, or...?
I don't think she was alive.
Right, okay. And without putting words, did you not panic and think, I need to phone the police? Something's obviously happened.
I did, but I just don't know. I just don't know. couldn't see what was going to happen that was going to change anything.
Were you panicking at that time?
I think I was just too much coming in minds at once.
It was what, sorry?
Just too many thoughts in my mind at once.
Mm. Okay. Did you actually phone anybody at all?
I can't remember.
Is that, you can't remember, but you possibly may have done?
I don't know. I can't remember.
And if you did, then who would you have phoned? Who would you likely to have phoned?
No one. I don't think I would have phoned anyone.
Okay.
I don't think I was in a state to phone anyone.
Okay.
So just to take that in, there's 13 blows
I got this.
to the head. What do you have to say about that?
I think I'm just shocked. That's what I've got to say about it.
Can you tell us how she came to suffer those injuries?
No, I just don't know. That's why I'm shocked. There was no fight. There was no. I don't know. I just don't know.
My interpretation of this is that that would have been a repeated and prolonged attack. To have suffered 13 separate blows to the head. Help us out with it. So how has this come about?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
You know, I'm sure you spent quite a lot of time whilst you've been here in custody thinking about things and trying to think back.
I'm trying to piece together that night, and I can't piece it together. I just can't piece it. There is no frame of reference to piece it together.
I mean, you've told Mike and I that nobody else entered the flat. The door was double locked with the key left inside.
Mm.
So that leaves you, Saeed.
It's not me. I'm not that person. I don't remember hitting. I don't remember strangling her. I don't remember any of that.
So if you had such a good relationship, then why didn't you even think about trying to get her help? Why didn't you even think about trying to call an ambulance for her?
I don't know. I don't know. Do I wish it was Thursday afternoon again? Yes, I wish it was Thursday afternoon again. Do I wish I'd never come to her flat? Yes, I do. I can't turn the clock back. I can't change things. But do I wish any of this outcome? No. It's 2 lives ruined, and many others as well, probably.
He said he was not some hyper high-functioning psychopath, trying to make up a story like it was something from Silence of the Lambs. I'm just telling you what happened or what didn't happen. I can't tell you more than that, he said. Nassim also said that he had never been violent, but he did admit to experiencing memory lapses. In messages on his phone, he made disturbing statements. He admitted a desire to make an escort feel degraded. His arrest came as a shock to both neighbours, friends and family. All of them struggled to believe the allegations made against the man that they thought they knew. Nassim, a marketing specialist, lived with his long-term partner in a £600,000 semi-detached house situated in a private road not far from Amersham town centre. Neighbours expressed their disbelief and confusion, with one saying, "I am really just too shocked to say anything about him. He is our neighbour and a lovely man." Another neighbour questioned if they had the right person, saying, "He is such a lovely man and always very friendly, and he says hello when you meet in the road. This just does not seem right." Another neighbour, wishing to remain anonymous, recounted the night of the incident, saying, The police and an ambulance arrived in the street at about 10:30 p.m. last night, and we knew straight away that something bad had happened. Deliveroo driver Aaron Harvey, aged 24 and residing in a nearby block of flats, also recalled a concerning encounter with Christina Abbott's father. He mentioned speaking to the worried father the night of the incident. Harvey described how the distressed man had approached him. He said that he had been searching for his 28-year-old blonde daughter, and that he was growing increasingly concerned. He said no one had heard from her for about 10 hours and he was worried. And I felt sorry for him. He was panicking. I said I had seen a blonde girl who didn't live here quite a bit recently, but I didn't know her. I hadn't seen her that day. During the trial, the judge said that he had presented himself as a well-spoken, educated, and professional man seeking enjoyment, but the reality was much different. She pointed out the considerable stress arising from his unstable work situation, and they noted his growing obsession with escorts. This was coupled with a spiraling issue of stimulant and alcohol addiction, both of which were getting more and more out of control. During his court appearance, Nassim, dressed in grey jogging bottoms and a top, spoke only to confirm his name, date of birth and address. Nassim had repeatedly denied the charge of murder. Instead, he claimed that he had acted in self-defense. He claimed that a red mist may have clouded his judgment during the incident. The prosecutor firmly dismissed Nassim's testimony, saying it was all a pack of lies. The banker was accused of subjecting his victim to a terrible attack. An attack in which a post-mortem examination later revealed that Abbott had endured 13 head injuries. This was along with compression injuries to her neck, consistent with being throttled. At some point around midday, Nassim struck Abbott on the head with a kitchen pestle, leaving her on a bed in a horrifying scene surrounded by her own vital fluids. It was also discovered that Nassim remained in the flat for 12 hours following the murder. During this time, he engaged in alcohol consumption, substance use, and the transmission of explicit and adult material. This included pictures and videos of himself involved in intimate acts with other escorts. The flat yielded additional evidence, including a blood-stained bottle of brandy, stimulants, poppers, and the other half of the pestle and mortar. Nassim's DNA-ridden fingerprints were also found on the bath, a sharp kitchen implement, and on Christina's iPhone. However, Nassim claimed that Christina had attempted to throttle him during an adult game, and that he responded by striking her in self-defense, losing control in the process. However, he was unable to provide an explanation to the jurors regarding the presence of the pestle, an object which was coupled with a mortar bowl discovered in the bedroom by the investigating officers. As a result, the jury did not accept his explanation. They totally rejected his claims of self-defense and loss of control. On January the 10th, 2019, after just 2 hours and 40 minutes of deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict, finding Zahid Nassim guilty of murder. Prosecutors' assessment suggested that Nassim attacked Christina simply because he was angry and jealous. He was triggered when she appeared to divert her attention to the birthday messages on her phone, seemingly neglecting to give him the attention that he wanted. Attention that he perhaps demanded due to the exchange of money. This alleged altercation over her attention is believed to have escalated into a fatal incident. Additionally, the judge described Nassim's attack on Abbott as being of extraordinary ferocity. She pointed out the considerable pain inflicted based on the extent of her injuries, noting the unimaginable terror she must have endured in her final moments. She also acknowledged the nature of Abbott's profession as an escort, saying that she had chosen to earn her money in a business with a long history, but one that had always carried significant risks of danger. Christina Abbott's parents, along with her brother, wept in the public gallery while a victim impact statement was read to the court. In this statement, her father, a retired BT engineer, expressed the constant worry he and his family had regarding their daughter's safety, along with her financial situation while she lived in London. Christina had always assured them that she was doing okay, but the family missed her visits. Visits in which she had the power to brighten their lives with her happiness and positivity. He spoke of their shattered dreams, saying, "I was hoping one day to walk her down the aisle. She would have been such a beautiful bride, and instead we had to take her in a coffin." He added, "May she rest in peace. We love you, Christina, and miss you so much." The parents also clarified that Christina had held legitimate jobs in a state agency and events, and they wanted to emphasise that she was much more than how she was portrayed in the case. They highlighted that Christina remained a loving, caring and loyal daughter, sister, niece and friend. In a post-sentence statement, they described the impact on their personal and professional lives. They said, "This has had a tremendous impact on our personal and professional lives, as we have not been able to meet commitments due to the level of stress and shock we have been experiencing. We have our family tradition of going on holiday every year. We visited Tenerife and Lapland last year." Christina said in April, "Mummy, why don't we go to southern France this year for our family getaway?" But instead of planning the holiday, we had to go and plan her funeral. She was beautiful inside and out and also very kind to others, putting everyone else's needs first. Detective Chief Inspector Gemma Heater of Sussex Police also expressed her condolences for Christina Abbott. She acknowledged the strength and dignity displayed by Christina's friends and family throughout the case. Heater also mentioned that Zahid Nassim, after receiving medical treatment, cooperated with the investigation and openly discussed his knowledge of Christina and the true nature of their relationship. However, right until the end, he denied any intent to kill Christina. He attributed the incident to alcohol and substance consumption. He still to this day claims no recollection of how it all unfolded. Heater highlighted the far-reaching impact of Nassim's actions, affecting not only Christina's family but also his own. Now, everyone involved faces the challenges of rebuilding their lives. Zahid Nassim was sentenced to a minimum of just 19 years in prison. Money, we all need it. It pays the bills, puts food on the table and keeps a roof over your head. But for some people, money takes over all other urges. After all, the love of money is the root of all evil. Helen Elizabeth Bailey was born on the 22nd of August 1964 in Northumberland, England. She had originally intended to become a forensic scientist, but quickly she fell in love and found herself in marketing. She worked on campaigns for characters in Rugrats and Garfield. In 1996, she married John Simfield. He was the head of a licensing rights company, and Elizabeth now found herself writing. She threw herself into a new passion of writing stories for children and teenagers. This creative outlet quickly turned into a flourishing career. She brought the crazy world of Electra Brown to life. Her books were incredibly popular and well loved. But in February 2011, tragedy struck. She and her husband John were holidaying in Barbados when John went for a morning swim in the sea. But before long, Helen heard John cry out from the water. He had become caught in a riptide and he tragically drowned. By this point, they had been together for 22 years. By way of helping her grieving process, Helen threw herself into her writing. She started a blog called Planet Grief. It was a way of processing her own emotions, and it allowed for others affected by grief and loss to reach out and share their stories too.
The book is based on my blog, Planet Grief, which I started after my husband drowned whilst we were on holiday in Barbados in February 2011. And if you think it's going to be just another misery memoir, a miserable misery memoir, well, some of it is miserable, but some of it is actually very funny, even though I didn't realise it would be at the time. So although I do cry when I take the wheelie bins out or become hysterical buying a single Scotch egg, I also tell you about bereavement therapists who were crazier than I was, going to parties on my own, enduring Christmas, and eventually dating. To grieve is to mourn the loss of someone or something that we cared deeply about, whether that's because of death, divorce, or some other traumatic life event. If you're in that space right now, I really hope that the book brings you some comfort. But whatever your circumstances, I hope that you just have a very enjoyable read.
It was a community-based blog where anyone was welcome. Her openness and honesty made her easy to connect with, and through her blog and her memoir, she helped many other people going through the same things. It was through Planet Grief that in October 2011, Helen met Ian Stewart. Ian's wife, Diane, had died very suddenly in 2010. Their relationship began as supportive friends, but they soon became a lot closer. Helen would describe their union as two grieving families coming together. The pair began dating and eventually became engaged. They moved into a beautiful gated home together in the picturesque town of Royston in Hertfordshire. They lived with Ian's two sons and Helen's beloved dog, Boris. Boris had been around since Helen was married to John. It seemed that after so much tragedy in both of their lives, they had eventually found happiness again. But, tragically, this happiness wouldn't last long. On the 15th of April, just before 4 p.m, 999 received a phone call.
Hertfordshire Police, how can I help?
Hello there. My partner has been missing since Monday and not contacted anyone. Said she was going away, hasn't ended up where she said she was going. So we've just decided we should report it.
Oh, yes, hasn't been reported already?
No, it hasn't, no.
Okay, right. Has she been missing since Monday?
Yeah.
Okay, bear with me. So, right, bear with me, so I have to put these details down.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Bear with me, I'm popping these details down. So she's been missing since Monday?
Mm-hmm.
Monday, okay. What's the address that she's missing from? And what's the town? What's your partner's name?
Helen Bailey.
And what's her date of birth?
Oh, crikey. God, she phoned me there. 22nd. Right, just let me double check. 1 second. Oh, God. I'm sorry, I'm just double checking. As you asked that, it just went straight out my head.
No problem.
22nd of August, 1964.
As well as her home in Royston, Helen had another property in Kent by the seaside. She would often go there to write and take some time for herself. But when police arrived at the property to search for her, it was clear that neither she nor anyone else had been there in quite some time. By all accounts, it appeared that Helen had left a few days prior, along with her dog Boris, to get some space and to clear her head. But nobody had heard from her since. This was extremely out of character for Helen. Those close to her wondered if her stressful work schedule had caused her to drop off of the grid for a little while. But days turned into weeks, and with no trace of Helen turning up anywhere, 6 weeks after Helen disappeared, the police started to expand their search. Police spoke to Ian, eager to piece together every last second of Helen's last movements. Up to that point, Ian had been pretty evasive on his whereabouts on the 11th of April. Initially though, they'd put it down to panic over his missing wife. But now they needed his help. It was time for Ian to dig deep.
From what I understand, from what we've discussed and what I've been told by the investigation, is that Helen was last seen on Monday, the 11th of April.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Would like you to take me through what happened that day.
This is what I can't remember very well. I'll tell you what I can remember, but some of what I can remember is maybe what I've said since and when I've looked in the diary. Things like that.
Okay.
When I got to solicitors, he went through the paperwork I'd taken and I realised I'd only taken very old paperwork. I'd left half of here. So I dashed back. I wrote back, wasn't sure what happened. Saw the other paperwork on the side. Shouted for Helen. Helen wasn't there, so I thought at that stage she was just walking the dog or was his neighbours. Went back to solicitors, was only in town. Just dropped the paper, didn't stay, dropped the paperwork and came home. Helen still wasn't here. And then I started to think, well, she has gone to Broadstairs.
Police took another look at her seaside cottage in Broadstairs. This time they digged a little deeper and examined her Wi-Fi router. Her phone had been going to voicemail since she had last been seen on Monday the 11th of April. But it seemed that on the 16th of April, there was a glimmer of hope that she had in fact been there. Helen Bailey's mobile had briefly connected to the Wi-Fi in her cottage. Police wondered if Helen had, in fact, just been in Broadstairs the entire time. Following this, a closer look at her bank transactions gave them more hope that Helen was still out there. There had been quite a bit of activity on her account. Further analysis of her bank accounts showed that a standing order from Helen's personal account to her joint account had been increased. This had gone from £600 a month to £4,000 per month. Her bank card had also been used to renew an Arsenal season ticket costing £3,000. It soon became pretty clear that it wasn't Helen moving this money around at all. It must have been someone else. Police went back to the house that Ian shared with Helen. They urgently needed to speak with him, but Ian wasn't there. Instead, he had left to go on a 2-week Spanish holiday, a holiday that both he and Helen were meant to go on together. And then, on July the 11th, 3 months after Helen Bailey had last been seen, officers arrived at her home that she shared with Ian once more. At just after 7 AM that morning, Ian was arrested on suspicion of murder and the theft of Elizabeth's money.
Okay, I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Helen Bailey.
You're joking.
And of disposing her body in for a likely cause of the coroner and of money, Helen Bailey. So you do not have to say anything that may harm your defence, do your mention in question, something that you may to rely in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Do you understand that?
I guess so.
Alright, then?
Bloody hell, why?
Okay, we're going to speak to you at the police station, alright? So what needs to happen, you need to probably get some clothes on, okay, and then you need to go to the police station, and these officers will transport you to the police station.
Why? I don't understand. What happened? You can't tell me.
We can't discuss it.
We can't discuss it at the moment. We'll talk to you when we get to the police station, alright?
Where is she?
Police carried out a more extensive search of the couple's property, and on July the 15th, they found what they were looking for. An incredibly disturbing discovery that would leave a nation shocked. Helen Bailey's body was discovered in the house's cesspit, located beneath the garage. Alongside her body was her beloved dog, Boris. She had been suffocated, but it was impossible to tell whether she was suffocated before or after she was put in the cesspit. Both of these concepts are harrowing. Ian had purposely parked the Jeep over the top of the cesspit during the police's initial searches to prevent it from being detected. Ian Stewart was now officially charged with the murder of Helen Bailey.
You're the last person to see her alive. You wait 4 days to report her missing. You're vague about your movements on the 11th, at best, vague. You take a duvet to the tip on the 11th. You don't report her missing for 4 days. The following day you go to Broadstairs. I don't know why. Why did you go there? Did you see Helen on the 16th? Because according to the technical information we've got, her phone is in Broadstairs. And you're in Broadstairs. Was Helen there? She wasn't, was she? Or was she? You tell me. Did you kill Helen Bailey? Did you intend to kill her? Or was this an accident? What happened?
Did you just lose control, just lose it? Some big argument and you killed her. And you've been covering that ever since. Because if that's what's happened, you need to tell us now. Because this could be your last opportunity to speak to the police about this. You are here on suspicion of murder. You need to tell us what happened. There is transactions where it clearly shows, from what I've seen, that you have taken money, or someone has taken money, which I believe to be you, from her account into your joint account, which you have obviously access to. Therefore, you've now got access to an extra £12,000. You will have benefited from her death, is that correct? Why do you say that? Financially, you will have benefited from her death, would you not say?
It seemed that Ian had been plotting this for quite some time. Helen had written up her will in 2012. In this will, she had left her fortune to her brother John, stepson Daniel and her friend Jenny. But in 2014, she changed it so that Ian would inherit the majority of her assets, meaning he wouldn't be left financially vulnerable. Helen also took out a life insurance policy to cover a potential $1.2 million inheritance tax bill. This was in case she died before they got married. Several months before Helen was killed in February 2016, Ian began giving her the sleeping aid Zopiclone. This medication had been prescribed to Ian for his sleeping problems. Instead, he often crushed it up and put it in Helen's breakfast in the mornings. Over the next few months, Helen became concerned about her energy levels and sleeping. She made several internet searches that included, "Why do I keep falling asleep?" and "falling asleep in the afternoon." And then on Monday the 11th of April 2016, Helen spent the morning looking at wedding venues and sending emails. Sometime between 10:51 AM and 2:30 PM, Ian drugged Helen into a stupefied state. The exact timing of her death is still inconclusive. He then disposed of Helen's body in the cesspit beneath the garage of the house, and shortly after he threw in her dog, Boris, as well. After this, Ian increased the standing order to transfer money from Helen's bank account to their joint Santander account. He was supposed to visit the doctor's surgery just before 3 PM, but phoned the GP and said he was having car trouble and asked to rearrange his appointment for later on. After he visited the GP, he was caught on camera making a trip to the refuse centre. A refuse centre is basically just the dump or the tip to dispose of a duvet. Following this, he met with Helen's solicitor and tried to hastily push through the sale of one of Helen's houses. Helen's solicitor described Ian as being quite aggressive, and they refused to discuss the matter any further on the basis that Helen wasn't present. That evening, Ian went to watch his son play bowls, before buying a Chinese takeaway for them both. He sent a text message to Helen's phone with just 2 kisses in the message. A few days passed and Helen's family and friends were becoming concerned that they hadn't heard from her for quite a while. They contacted Ian, which prompted him to phone the police and report her as missing. Ian claimed that Helen had left a note on the side for him, but nobody else ever saw these notes, so police believe it was all part of a web of lies that Ian was attempting to spin. On April 16th, 2016, Ian drove to Helen's cottage in Kent with her mobile phone. When he got there, Helen's phone briefly connected to the Wi-Fi. He then continued to live his life as if nothing had happened. This murder appeared to be based on nothing more than pure greed. In January 2017, the trial of Ian Stewart began, but things got more bizarre. In his own defense, Ian claimed that Helen and her dog Boris had been kidnapped on April the 11th, 2016 by 2 men called Nick and Joe. He said he hadn't told the police about this to keep Helen safe, but the elusive Nick and Joe demanded ransom money. Ian said he spoke to Helen for the last time on a phone belonging to one of the men on April the 15th. Following this claim, Ian was presented with 2 men in court. court. The prosecution believed that they had found the men that Ian had based the descriptions of the kidnappers upon. And honestly guys, this is almost too funny to be true. One man, Nick Cook, was Stuart's next door neighbour, and the other was Joe Capullo, whom he had known for several years prior in his old home before moving in with Helen. He had admitted to knowing both men, but said they didn't match the description of the kidnappers. It's no wonder that Helen was the creative force in a relationship. Ian couldn't even imagine two people without using his neighbour and a friend as a template. Several of Helen's neighbours gave evidence that they had seen Helen walking Boris on the day that she disappeared. After an exhaustive 7-week trial and just 6 hours of deliberation, on the 22nd of February 2017, the jury found Ian Stewart guilty of the murder of Helen Bailey. By the way, this case goes off on a shocking tangent after I share the sentencing, so stick with it. The next day, Judge Andrew Bright sentenced Ian. Ian Stewart now refused to appear via video link to hear his sentencing. Judge Bright said it was difficult to imagine a more heinous crime. Ian was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 34 years. He would be 90 years old before he becomes eligible for parole. As a result of this case, detectives began re-examining the death of Ian Stewart's previous wife, Diane. Diane passed away after an epileptic seizure at the couple's home in 2010. In August 2018, Ian Stewart was arrested on suspicion of Diane's murder.
Okay. Having left prison property, time now is 10:15 by my watch. Mr. Stewart, I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of your late wife, Diane
You're joking?
Stewart, on Friday.
You're digging
Friday the 25th of June.
Well, I'm
say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later on in court.
Well,
you do say
what
may be
rubbish.
given evidence.
Have you got nothing better to do than make
We
things
can
up?
discuss this at Thorpwood Police Station, which is where we're going to.
On the day Diane passed away, the couple were home alone. Ian called the ambulance service at 11:24 a.m, claiming that he had found his wife unresponsive and not breathing.
Are you with the patient now?
I'm just indoors at the moment. I'm just
Can
going
you
out.
see her from where you are?
Yeah.
How old is she, please?
She's 45, 47.
Is she breathing?
I don't think so. I've turned her to try and put her in recovery position, but I can't do it. She's just flopped back. I think she's had a fit.
You think she's had a fit?
Well, I think so. She does have epilepsy.
When paramedics and later doctors attended, she was already not breathing and without a heartbeat. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Diane took medication for epilepsy, and this was given as the original cause for her death.
What was her cause of death? How long had you been with Diane before you rang the ambulance? Did you try to do anything to bring her round? Did you check whether she was breathing? How did you check if she was breathing, if you did? How long were you with her before you rang the ambulance? You said, I found Diane lying on the patio. She was unconscious. And then you said, I went inside to get the cordless house phone. So presumably you had been out there with her before you rang the ambulance. Is that right? You went to get the cordless house phone. Where did you go once you had that phone? Were you inside the house when you made the call?
Did you call 999 immediately? Did you do anything else there? You didn't think she was breathing. You said, I've tried, I've turned her to put her in the recovery position, but I can't do it, she's just flopped back. Can you describe to us how you put her in a recovery position? Or how you tried to?
In fact, Diane had only suffered 3 mild episodes in her entire lifetime. Although most of her remains were cremated, Diane's brain had been donated to science. This means her brain was able to be examined by forensic experts. Their conclusions were that Diane's death was most likely caused by a prolonged restriction to her breathing from an outside source. So, Helen Bailey wasn't Ian Stewart's first victim. In 2002, he was found guilty of his first wife's murder. This time, he was given a whole life order. This monster will never be free again.
There's a freezer here that I want to get into. It's locked, but...
Henriette Such was born in 1984 in Hungary to Mother Mary. She left her motherland in the late 2000s. This was after the marriage with the father of 2 of her 3 children ended. She spent a few years in Germany before arriving in the UK in 2012. There she worked as an escort in East London. After briefly returning home to give her 3rd child up for adoption, she then moved to Birmingham in 2014 with a Hungarian man who badly maltreated her. He promised her work and opportunities to better her life, but that never materialized. Instead, he disappeared with her passport and birth certificate. This effectively left her stranded in the country. Betrayed and desperate, Henriette eventually made her way to London, and there she found herself in the throes of yet another horrifically toxic relationship. Luckily though, this time she got out faster. When she then became homeless, she found help and support at the Welcome Centre. This is a charity organisation based in Ilford. The people who knew Henriette well described her as cheery, affectionate and determined, despite the circumstances that she was in. Henriette also really enjoyed drawing. The people who knew her thought it was a mechanism for escape, taking her mind somewhere else as she was extremely vulnerable during that time of her life. Despite this, Henriette pulled herself together and had plans to transform her life. She enjoyed group activities and was actively seeking to start a college education. But that was when she came under the influence of a very violent man, a man named David Dallison. He forced Henriette back into escorting, a profession she'd barely just escaped. He used illicit substances and violence as a method of control. Things came to a head in January of 2016. She was admitted to hospital for falling from the 5th floor balcony of the Ilford Tower block. The apartment she fell from belonged to Dallison. She suffered multiple injuries, fractured ribs and shoulder, and was admitted to hospital. When Henriette Such was at her lowest, she then met Zahid Yunus. Mirachan Mustafa, otherwise known as Jan or MJ, was born in 1986. She was of Turkish Cypriot descent. She grew up with a cousin, Aisha Hussein, under the watchful eyes of their mother. MJ worked as a waitress at Upton Park, West Ham's football ground. She was a proud mother of 3 children. One of MJ's biggest dreams was to help people who were struggling. She was very loving, she was cheery and kind. It was said she would do anything for those that she cared about. However, things started going downhill when MJ started having money troubles. She had to send her 3 children to live with a family member while she struggled to stabilise her situation. Things went from bad to worse when she got evicted from her apartment for not paying her bills for the month. A combination of dyslexia and her struggling financial situation meant that things spiraled easily and quickly. She turned to alcohol and illicit substances, and she started hanging out with people she met at the Custom House. It was there she met Zahid Yunus. Canning Town is home to new residential tower developments in London. These are aimed at providing affordable housing to low to mid-income families. The area has a strong Turkish culture and is littered with pizzerias, fast food spots, hotels and waterside restaurants. And it is a small flat on a street in this vibrant part of East London that Henriette and MJ lived in after they met Zahid. 38-year-old Zahid Yunus was cut from the same cloth as the most violent and evil elements of London. He was aggressive, arrogant, and had a history of maltreating and violating women, a history of grooming and even kidnapping. And for years, he simply got away with it. The earliest recorded account of his behaviour was in 2001. He started seeing a 16-year-old college student, and she eventually got pregnant. At first, he seemed very attentive and paid me lots of attention, she said. And then he changed. He became, and I quote, quite extremely paranoid about me looking at other men. At some point, Eunice even locked her in a cupboard. He would only let her out when she agreed to have intimate relations with him. He continued to terrorize the girl for years, and at some point even threatened the girl's mother. On one occasion, he even appeared in her home and grabbed her by the neck. He threatened to take her child to Pakistan. Around this same time, authorities reported that Zahid disturbingly was also grooming a 12-year-old girl. Eunice was 19 at the time, and after repeating the same pattern of attention, paranoia, and maltreatment, he forced the underage girl into an unofficial marriage with him in 2004 at a mosque. The girl, who was 14 at the time of the marriage, said she didn't speak Arabic, and therefore it was only after the ceremony was over that she realised what had happened. Eunice was subsequently arrested and charged with assault, false imprisonment, violations of a child, and 26 other charges. But he was still acquitted by the court after his trial. He only pleaded guilty to around 6 of the 26 charges brought before the court, and therefore he was sentenced to just 30 months in prison. According to another 17-year-old girl, Eunice went back to his old habit not long after he left prison. He moved himself into her flat and began to hover around her when anybody came to visit. He then stopped her from leaving her flat, and eventually the real maltreatment started. According to her, it was brutal, systemic, and constant. He used hammers, sharp kitchen implements, barbecue forks, and lighters. During this time, she suffered multiple injuries. At one stage, she was unable to walk after she was thrown out of her window. He kept her from reporting him by threatening to end her family's lives, and threatening to distribute videos of her being violated by him. Thankfully, her mother grew worried enough to call the police, and there was enough evidence to charge Eunice slightly more seriously this time. However, he was sentenced to only 5 years in prison. This was because of his pleas and admitting to the charges of assault, of grievous bodily harm, and unlawful wounding. Eunice was sentenced in 2008, and when he got out, he was somehow declared a medium risk and monitored by the police. Henriette Such met Eunice in the hospital she was admitted to after an incident with her ex, David Dallison, in January of 2016. He called himself a boxer because of his domineering size, and according to Henriette, he was kind and affectionate. She fell for him instantly. After months of seeing each other, Henriette decided to leave the shelter she stayed at the time and moved in with Eunice, but only after trying to assure the charity staff that this was a good idea. She insisted that Eunice didn't have a toxic or possessive personality. So Henriette moved in with Eunice in his Canning Town apartment. And predictably, he began to show his true colours shortly after that. Henriette failed to turn up in court to testify in a case against Dallison. This was the ex-partner who had previously violated and maltreated her. This was a case that she had been eager to pursue, so she really should have been there. However, she wasn't there due to Eunice. To prevent the police from seeking her out, he forced her to leave a message saying she wasn't feeling well. At this time, alarm bells should have been ringing. The last reported sighting of Henriette was in East London in 2016. There, she was seen in the company of Eunice. This was when he received a penalty possession for illicit substances. Sadly, nobody came looking for Henriette after she disappeared. MJ came to know Eunice through her vices that often led her to criminals, and it was through one of them that she met Zahid. He lived near MJ at the time, and he was often seen in the local shops alongside her. MJ's family saw her for the last time in May of 2018 at her mother's home. When nobody could find her, she was reported missing by her family. The missing report inquiry that came about from their report left much to be desired. The Metropolitan Police classified MJ's case as medium risk. The police refused to offer up a reward for information. They didn't allow the family to announce her missing status on television or to appeal her case. Given what the police had gathered about MJ's past, they presumed that she had simply run away and would return when she was ready. So the Mustafa family had to investigate her disappearance on their own. They found MJ's old mobile, which they passed to the police, but frustratingly, nothing came of it at that time. In July of 2018, the police officers in charge of watching Eunice showed up at his home to ask about MJ, but he denied having ever known her personally. Eunice claimed that she was a friend of a friend, and the police simply encouraged him to report any sightings of her that he may have. Up until 2019, the police kept close contact with Eunice. They often exchanged calls and text messages and swung by for routine visits, for interviews, and for updates on his life. Eunice didn't shy away from these either. He even contacted them 26 times to lodge complaints of his own. Perhaps that was why the discovery that followed next came as such a surprise. In late April of 2019, an elderly missionary woman placed a call to the Met Police about a potentially ill or dead person. They were supposed to meet over 3 days ago, but she'd been unable to reach him. Her friend, whom she was in truth supporting, claimed to be sick with Crohn's disease. In a message exchanged between them, Zahid Eunice had declared that he only had her and God. So perhaps he was a man ready to change. Throughout this relationship, the missionary had sent Zahid over £1,000. When the communication stopped, she tried visiting his apartment. She knocked on the door, but she heard nothing back. She even tried looking in through the windows. When there was no response at all, she made the decision to call the Metropolitan Police. Perhaps something terrible had happened to Eunice inside this apartment. The police quickly came knocking on his door, but still there was no sign of him anywhere. No response to calls, knocks, or shouting of his name. So they climbed in through the window. They entered into an apartment in disarray, somewhere that hadn't been properly cleaned in years. Once inside, they searched for any indication as to where Zahid may have gone. The officers kept an eye out for hospital letters, doctor's notes, and other things of that nature. At the very end of a small hallway, they spotted a utility closet that was blocked by several objects. After clearing the way, they opened the door. Standing in there was a large freezer closed with a lock. On a hunch, they decided to check what was inside. The freezer was surrounded by flies. This is the real police body cam footage of this discovery.
There's a freezer here that I want to get into. It's locked, but... yeah.
With some effort, they pried open the lock and came to a shocking sight. Sheets of plastic and air fresheners partially buried something that stuck out the edge of the freezer. Upon inspection, it was a human foot. In an instant, the flat was transformed into a crime scene. Police were now in a race to determine the person to whom it belonged. Investigators now swarmed Eunice's apartment. The hunt for more evidence to discover exactly what had happened here was on. Sarah Thurkel was one of the country's leading CSI instructors. She was in charge of identifying the body. With the help of her team, she gathered fingerprints and biological evidence like the dead flies. Dr. Carl Harrison, a forensic anthropologist, was brought in to identify the body in the freezer. While they allowed the body to defrost naturally, the investigators focused on establishing who else had been in the apartment aside from Eunice. They scoured every surface of the house for fingerprints and DNA evidence, and the police started canvassing the area. They wanted to understand the personality and the whereabouts of Eunice. Quickly, his neighbours painted a picture of a disagreeable man, someone with anger issues and a history of violence. A request was made for his records while the CSIs pieced together the identity of several women who had been in Eunice's flat. One of them was a pack of medication for somebody named Mirakan Mustafa, or MJ. Someone they now discovered had been missing for over 11 months. At this point, the authorities were several days into the investigation. The body was now defrosted enough to analyse. Examiners noted a few tattoos that matched those that MJ was noted to have. The body's features also seemed to match the hair and facial structure of MJ. After acquiring DNA evidence from her immediate family, the police were able to confirm that it was indeed MJ's body that was found in the freezer. Shortly after MJ's body was identified, the police began to seek out the women whose items were found in Eunice's apartment during the investigation. They were very forthcoming about Eunice and his history, allowing them to identify him as the most likely suspect. Fingerprint evidence also established that it was Eunice who dumped MJ's body in the freezer. At this juncture, the real hunt for Zahid Yunus began. They combed CCTV for a sighting of him, but they found nothing. Around the same time, news came of a second body in the freezer directly below MJ's. They quickly confirmed the body to be that of Henriette Suge. She was one of the only women linked to Eunice that the police had not been able to track down. There were bags of shredded paper detailing her feelings, her thoughts, emotions, and her drawings during the time she spent with Eunice. She mentioned him directly, talked about him maltreating her, and how he displayed the same patterns of control he had used time and time again. This was the behaviour that he was already known for, but behaviour that he was free to carry out again and again. Henriette's DNA was already in the system. This is because of the nature of the violation from the case she had with David Dallison. Zahid Yunus was tracked down and arrested not long after. The police waited for him at his brother's apartment and apprehended him with force. Although he was now in custody, the investigation was still far from over. The police discovered MJ's phone under Eunice's couch, and her mobile data revealed that they did, in fact, know each other, and they knew each other intimately. They also found Henriette's fingerprint in his cooker, and both of the women's bodies had injuries concurrent with Eunice's established patterns of violence. Henriette had suffered multiple head traumas, the likely cause of her demise. There were also 58 additional injuries. All of the ribs on the left side of her body were also broken. MJ had serious internal injuries, compression fractures to her sternum, and a number of her ribs were broken as well. Using the timeline of each woman's disappearance, the police were able to determine when they passed away. They estimated that Henriette must have been dead for around 2 years, and MJ for less than 1 year. MJ and Henriette were laid to rest by their respective families, with no small amount of resentment towards the Metropolitan Police, along with the justice system that allowed a monster like Eunice to thrive for so long, free to do what he wanted without being caught. The Mustafa family in particular were furious with law enforcement for the approach to MJ's disappearance. Perhaps if they'd been allowed to be more proactive, all of this could have been over much, much quicker. The trial of Zahid Yunus lasted 6 long weeks. It drew to a close on September the 3rd. Yunus strung together lie after lie each time evidence was presented. He claimed that he was blackmailed to store the bodies of both women in a freezer, blackmailed by an unnamed and unknown mysterious man. He also insisted he was a decent guy despite everything he'd done in the past. This should have been a provable enough lie for nobody in the court to have trusted a single word that he said. Zahid's chances of receiving a lenient sentence evaporated after all of the women he'd assaulted came forward to testify. This included the 14-year-old that he groomed, the college student that he assaulted, and several other women. Mrs. Justice Chima Grube presided over the court proceedings. As if the evidence and testimony were not damning enough, Yunus lost his cool when he was pressed for information. He called the judge arrogant, and he hurled slurs at one of the victims while she was taking the stand. Yunus was a coward and a bully until the very end. He refused to attend his own sentencing, a sentencing in which he received 38 years to life in prison. This is the true story of Zara Alina. She believed that no woman should have to worry about walking home alone, and she led by example. But on one such walk after a night out, she would cross paths with the antithesis of everything that she was and what she stood for. What would become of Zara? Zara Natasha Alina was her mother's only child. Growing up, she loved ballet, tap dancing, and skating. Even as a child, she was an extrovert. She could talk for hours, but she was a great listener too. Zara, or Zash to her close friends, knew what she wanted in life from the age of just 5. Zara was going to be a lawyer. When she put her mind to something, nothing would stop her. Zara worked hard to earn a law degree from the University of Westminster. She was strong and independent, and by the time she was 35 years old, she was a trainee solicitor who had just started at the Royal Courts of Justice. Her dreams were all coming true. She told her friend that she was as happy as she'd ever been, and that she could now start thinking of her future and starting a family of her own. Things were falling into a perfect place. On the 25th of June 2022, Zara met a friend for a catch-up. They met at a local pub, the Great Spoon of Ilford. There they had dinner and a drink before moving on to a bar. Here, Zara only drank water, but the two were just enjoying each other's company. At around 2 AM, they called it a night. The friend got in a cab, but Zara decided to walk. She was close to home and it was a warm evening. Ilford is a bustling, diverse area in East London. Zara began to head home along Cranbrook Road, a well-lit residential street just 10 minutes walk from her house. Here she arrived at the junction of Cranbrook Road at the same time as a man, in what would be described as a fatal coincidence. The man had also been in the Great Spoon of Ilford earlier in the evening, but he was kicked out after harassing a female bartender. He staggered around the streets of Ilford, following different women. This is the real CCTV of his actions. One woman, noticing he was trailing her, dived into a supermarket to hide. He marched up and down the aisles looking for her before waiting outside. Later, he went into a chicken shop, staring at a female customer. He had his hands down his trousers, and he then followed her too. But she luckily managed to lose him. He then followed a third woman along the street. When she noticed him, he overtook her, pretending to enter a house. But in fact, he was just hiding in a driveway, lying in wait. Fortunately, the woman went into her own house before she reached him. Wandering back to Cranbrook Road, the man spotted a fourth woman. This was Zara Alina. He crossed the road to begin walking closely behind her. He followed her for a while along the well-lit road. He was caught on camera several more times before he took his opportunity to grab her. He pounced on Zara from behind, placing one arm around her neck and a hand over her mouth. She was now just minutes from home. The fact that Cranbrook Road was a busy road, it had traffic flow and residential houses, as well as CCTV cameras. This didn't deter the man. He dragged Zara to the ground and into the dark shadows of a driveway. She fought back so hard that she was able to stand back up, but he struck her again repeatedly until she fell unconscious. He removed some of her clothing before forcing himself on her. He then kicked and stamped on Zara. CCTV, which captured the full attack, showed him walking away from the scene twice, but returning to viciously stamp on her once again. He used a fence post for balance to maximise the power of his blows. The attack lasted 9 minutes. He then stole her purse, keys, phone, leggings and underwear. What he didn't want to keep was just strewn on the pavement nearby. Zara lay alone for 20 minutes before she was discovered by 2 passing couples. She was terribly injured and struggling to breathe. Paramedics were called at 2:44 a.m. and for over an hour they desperately tried to save her life on that driveway. She was then taken to the Royal London Hospital. Surgeons fought tirelessly throughout the morning, but tragically her injuries were just too great. Zara Alina's life officially ended at 9:58 a.m. A post-mortem examination revealed that Zara had suffered 46 separate injuries in a 9-minute attack. Severe blunt force trauma to her head, deep lacerations to the scalp, bruising to the lips, eyes, nose and jaw, as well as to intimate areas. Her cause of death was traumatic brain injury and prolonged pressure to the neck. The brutality of the attack is almost impossible to imagine, but it was this brutality that caused Zara's killer to leave crucial evidence. 2 fingerprints were left on the fence post he had used to balance himself whilst he attacked. However, both prints were only partial, and neither of them were sufficient enough to generate a match from the millions of prints in the fingerprint database. But the police wasted no time. They collected CCTV footage and very quickly worked their way backwards from the attack, piecing together the suspect's movements in the lead-up. Investigators noticed something significant. He was wearing what they described as a prison-issue vest. This was someone who had been in trouble with the law previously and perhaps recently. An image was circulated around local police stations, and one vigilant officer recognised the man from a previous arrest. He was able to provide a name, and therefore the partial prints were compared to the ones they had on file for this potential suspect, and it was a positive match. The man's name was Jordan McSweeney. But it wasn't just CCTV of his movements before the crime that they gathered. They watched him walk back down Cranbrook Road after the attack, before making his escape by climbing a wall into nearby Valentine's Park. There he entered a fairground and made his way to a set of caravans towards the back. Valentine's Park skirts Cranbrook Road, and at the time there was a carnival or travelling fairground on it. Police made their way there and passed around the picture. The staff recognised McSweeney immediately and pointed towards a caravan. He's in that caravan, there, asleep, they told the police.
Jordan McSweeney?
Got cuffs on, yeah.
Can you stand up for us, mate?
Just tell him.
You're under arrest for rape and murder of a female at Cranbrook Road.
Right?
Okay.
I've got it. Yep. Come forward.
Just going to search you now, alright?
Less than 72 hours after Zara drew her final breath, McSweeney was arrested on the 29th of June. Jordan was 29 years old and a career criminal. He had 28 convictions for 69 previous offences: burglary, assaults on police and members of the public, driving offences, shoplifting, criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, possession of a weapon, theft of a vehicle. A long and varied career. As a child, he took part in bare-knuckle fights for cash, and he was expelled from 2 schools, one for selling illicit substances to other kids. Much of his childhood was spent in and out of youth offender institutes, and this trend continued into adulthood. Prior to Zara's attack, he had served 9 separate prison sentences. Even in prison, he managed to notch up over 100 separate incidents: violence, threatening guards, misogynistic behaviour towards female staff members. He even started a fire in prison and took part in a riot. This riot saw one guard requiring emergency treatment for a wound to the head made by a sharp implement. And unsurprisingly, McSweeney also had a history of domestic maltreatment. He had a restraining order placed on him by one ex-partner, and a ferocious attack on another almost left her blinded in one eye, resulting from a kick to the face. Following his arrest, McSweeney was interviewed by police 3 times. Knowing how to play the system, he refused to answer any questions. He wouldn't even provide his name or information on where he lived. The only time he spoke was to make threats. He told one officer he was going to bite his face off. He showed nothing but disrespect for the situation that he'd found himself in, right up until the point he was formally charged with Zara's murder. He didn't deny that the CCTV images were of him, and he didn't show a shred of remorse. In fact, at one point, he yawned loudly and complained he was bored. His crime had been opportunistic, and he knew it. He should have been in prison on the night of Zara's murder. Jordan McSweeney had only been released from prison 9 days earlier. He'd served part of a sentence for robbery before he was released on license. This was on the condition that he attended regular meetings with his probation officers. Released on June the 17th, he missed an appointment that very same day, and then another on June the 20th. The police weren't informed to arrest him for another 4 days on June the 24th. Police went to the address that they had on record for him, his mother's house. This was on June the 25th. But he wasn't there. This was the morning before the murder. An internal review later revealed that a series of errors and miscommunication meant that, despite his long history of violence, he'd been incorrectly labelled as a medium risk to society. He had no tag, and there was what has been described as no clarity whatsoever on where he'd been living. The evidence against McSweeney was overwhelming. Already the CCTV footage and the fingerprints placed him at the scene. But there was more. Police obtained footage from the fairground. This was captured the afternoon following the attack. McSweeney is seen wearing the same prison-issue vest and carrying a bag. He reappears just minutes later, shirtless and bagless. The bag was found hidden beneath the skirting of another caravan inside the park. Inside was the vest and his shoes, covered in Zara's DNA. He initially tried to blame all the DNA evidence on having been bitten by a dog. The weight of all this evidence against him gave him no alternative but to lie. McSweeney then pleaded guilty on all charges on November the 16th. Despite this, he still wasn't ready to face up to what he had done. When it came to his sentencing on December the 14th, he refused to leave his cell. The court saw this act as one final act of sheer disregard for Zara's life. At sentencing, the judge said, after satisfying his lust, he proceeded to destroy the woman he had just degraded. With sickening deliberation, he stamped on her. The defendant had the physical advantages of strength and surprise. In everything else, she was better than him. She was talented, spirited, intelligent, and kind. The defendant is a pugnacious and deeply violent man, with a propensity for violence. I have no doubt Jordan McSweeney intended to kill Zara Alina. The nature of his attack, stomping on her head, and the fact he returned twice drives me to the conclusion that this was a determined intention to kill. Jordan McSweeney was sentenced to life imprisonment. He will serve 38 years as the minimum term. Given his previous track record in prison, it's likely he will never see freedom again.
It looks like blood in there.
It's not blood, it's deer meat. I had a big bag of, there's a farm around here that does deer meat and hamburgers.
A mother's love should endure all. No matter what happens, we believe they should be programmed to protect their children. They should go to any length to protect them from coming to harm on any level. But sometimes something somewhere along the way goes terribly wrong. The instincts that seem to be innate are just missing, and that love turns to indifference and perhaps even to hate. However, trying to fully understand these mothers may be impossible for an outsider. This is an additional notice for viewer discretion.
Holy we got a body. Alright, let's...
Eli Hart was born to Yulissa Taylor and Tori Hart in December of 2015. The two young parents didn't stay together for very long, and Eli didn't have the easy, carefree childhood that all children deserve to have. Young Eli had Townes-Brock syndrome. This is a genetic disorder that is very rare. Less than 5,000 people have Townes-Brock syndrome in the United States. This syndrome can be spotted by physicians because of some of its unique physical characteristics. These include misshapen thumbs and unusually shaped ears. Townes-Brock syndrome can lead to several health challenges. These include hearing loss, intellectual disabilities, heart defects, and kidney issues. Not everyone with Townes-Brock syndrome will display all of these symptoms. And in Eli's case, the condition caused hearing problems. This meant he would have to use hearing aids for the rest of his life. He also had kidney disease, which required medical monitoring. In addition to these medical issues, Eli didn't have the most stable home to live in. At the beginning of his life, Eli's father, Tori, was absent. He had fallen out of contact with Eli shortly after his birth. However, in 2019, Eli and Tori were brought back together. This was when Tori and Yulissa both attended a family wedding. The exes exchanged phone numbers, and as a result of that meeting, Tori began having a relationship with his son once again. Both father and son found joy in the moments that they spent together. Finally, their relationship, their bond, began to grow. Tori would look forward to the next time he would get to see his son. He made it known that he missed Eli when he was with his mother. When Eli was with his dad, his wide, enthusiastic smile showed just how happy he was. Yulissa, however, seemed to be intent on driving a wedge between Eli and Tori as they grew closer. Yulissa made repeated statements about how Tori was a threat to her, even once saying that he had put explosives in her vehicle. However, no proof was ever found to support her stories. There were indications that Eli's mother wasn't properly taking care of him. Yulissa herself struggled with breakdowns in her mental health. Eli was subsequently placed in foster care in January of 2021. This was because of concerns that his mother couldn't adequately care for him. This wasn't the first time that Child Protection Services had heard Yulissa's name. In December of 2015, CPS officials had received its first tip about Yulissa. It was said that she was using illicit substances while she was pregnant with Eli. And then, when Eli wasn't even 2 years old, another report about Yulissa came in. This new report caused even more doubts about whether Yulissa could give Eli the care that he needed. The mother agreed to seek out the help she needed for both herself and for Eli. Therefore, the case was closed at that time by officials. However, as he got older, Eli was removed from Yulissa's care. When he was placed in foster care in January of 2021 with Yulissa's cousin, a man named Stephen Kronberg, and his wife Nikita, he remained in their care for almost a full year. Despite the troubles that he had already seen in his life, Eli was a kind boy. He was now in kindergarten and seemed to have a permanent smile. His infectious smile was adorable, in part because of the missing 2 front teeth he had as a result of losing his baby teeth. Like many young boys, Eli, who lived in Mound, Minnesota, enjoyed playing games of pretend, especially if there was a Matchbox car involved. He someday hoped to have an exciting career as a firefighter. With his outgoing personality and positive attitude, he quickly and easily made friends with other kids of his age. He had a deep love of adventure and exploration. He had a curious mind and a playful nature. During his time in foster care, Eli's father was able to continue to nurture a relationship with him. Eli absolutely loved the time that he spent with his father. This was according to Nikita Kronberg, who was Eli's foster mother. Father Tori, who was now living in Chetek, Wisconsin, had decided to attempt to get custody of Eli. This was instead of having him returned to the care of Ulissa. With his engagement to be married to a woman named Josie Josephson, Tory now felt he could provide a more stable home life and a better care for Eli than Ulissa could. Eli now began to spend supervised as well as unsupervised time with Ulissa. Whilst the full-time custody issues were being decided, people that were close to Eli said his temperament and behaviour began to change for the worse. Eli was now getting in trouble for acting out at school. He had started to show aggression towards other children, something he had never done before. In one instance, he had allegedly kicked a classmate in the throat. Another time, while playing, he was accused of pushing another child off of a slide. Statements that Eli made at school also painted a bleak picture of his home life with Ulissa. Eli had told a teacher at school that his mum sometimes pushed him at home. This supplied another indication that something was severely amiss. A play therapist who was working with Eli reported that Ulissa became argumentative with her. This caused Eli to run off and seek shelter in a nearby cupboard. Eli's sudden, unusual behaviour led Tory to state his worry, a deep worry that his son might be undergoing emotional or mental maltreatment from his mother. With Eli's behaviour changing so rapidly, it seemed as if there must be a reason for it. Because of this feared maltreatment, Tory was worried about Eli's safety when he returned to live with Ulissa. And as it turns out, Tory wasn't the only one who feared what might happen to Eli if he were to permanently be returned to his mother. Eli's foster care providers had also expressed their concerns. In March of 2022, Tory sent an email to the social workers handling his son's case. In that email, he wrote about his fears that his son might be undergoing maltreatment from his mother. The email he sent detailed the reasons that he suspected this treatment. He told the social workers that Eli was displaying signs of anxiety, such as difficulty sleeping, using baby talk when he had previously outgrown it, and chewing on the fabric of his shirt. In addition, Eli had started stuttering once again, something he had previously gotten over. All of those issues had only developed once he had been moved back in with his mother. During supervised visits that Eli had with his mother, social services saw some odd behaviour from Ulissa as well. On one occasion, she threw garbage at a staff member and dug her fingernails into the woman's hand. She would also ignore Eli's requests that she play with him during these visits. Instead, she would simply sit there, staring into the distance. Despite the concerns expressed to them, Eli's mother was given full custody of him once again on May the 10th, 2022. This was a very, very bad decision. In the late hours of May the 19th or the early morning of May the 20th, Eli's life sadly came to an end. Ulissa aimed a firearm at Eli. She then pulled the trigger 9 times. He was sat in the booster seats of Ulissa's car. This car was then stopped by Orono police on May the 20th after they responded to calls about someone driving a vehicle with a missing tyre and a broken back windshield. When officers pulled over the vehicle, they made a horrific discovery. They spotted thick red fluid in the vehicle as well as on the mother. This is the real footage of that traffic stop.
There is no tire there. Alright. There's what?
There's blood all over the car. I have a broken windshield and I'm missing a tire because some kids were shooting at my car. I had some.
What looks like blood in there?
It's not blood, it's deer meat. I had a big bag of, there's a farm around here that does deer meat and hamburgers.
Ulissa told police that kids with BB guns had shot out the back window of her vehicle. She explained the blood as having come from a deer. The police officers let her go back to a nearby apartment while they remained by her car. A short while later, police found Eli's body in the trunk of the car with a shotgun next to it.
Gun shells all over us. Yeah. Holy we got a body. Alright, let's cover it.
The death had happened mere days after his birth mother had finally regained custody of him. Eli's mother was arrested and charged with murder. However, she repeatedly denied killing her son. After the shooting had occurred, Eli's father lodged a lawsuit against Dakota County Social Services since they sent Eli back to Yulissa even though there were indications her mental health was not stable, as well as information that she was allegedly using illicit substances.
I can't even tell you how many times we expressed our concerns, our fears.
Hart's fiance says he recently filed for custody of Eli. That was a little over a year after court records showed Dakota County took the boy into custody. Documents also show Thaler was hospitalized then and was hearing voices telling her to kill herself.
On May 10th, they returned custody and closed the county case in Dakota County. And 10 days later, we got the news that Eli was found dead.
Other red flags mentioned in the lawsuit as to why she shouldn't have been awarded custody of Eli included how she was trying to sabotage Eli's relationship with his father, and that she didn't even have a stable housing situation. She also hadn't completed a parenting education program. This was simply because she hadn't shown up to enough of the classes. Tori's custody lawsuit will be heard in federal court sometime in 2024.
Now Eli's father is suing Dakota County and 3 workers, claiming that they are responsible for Eli's death by failing to protect him from Julissa Thaler despite countless red flags.
Lou Goose has been pouring through the complaint filed this afternoon and joins us now with more. Lou?
Rainey and Julie, many of those red flags are laid out in heartbreaking detail in this civil complaint, which documents that Dakota County officials knew of these dangers, were warned about them further by Eli's father, Tory Hart, and by Thaler's own father, and that county officials continued with their goal to keep Eli and his mother together. Julissa Thaler, accused of shooting her 6-year-old son Eli Hart multiple times at close range while strapped into a booster seat in her car, was given custody 10 days earlier by a judge at the recommendation of Dakota County Social Services. A wrongful death lawsuit filed by Eli's father, Tory Hart, against Dakota County lays out dozens of disturbing incidents involving Thaler's care that those officials knew about.
But before that happened, Ulissa's criminal charges had to be addressed.
Julissa Thaler, the mother accused of killing her son Eli Hart, has again turned down an offer to plead guilty to second-degree murder. Instead, she will go to trial for first-degree murder. Prosecutors say her...
After being charged with the crime, Julissa turned down a plea bargain and instead opted for a jury trial. During Ulissa's murder trial, her ex-boyfriend, Robert Pickerainen, provided key testimony about the night that young Eli died. He was able to fill in some of the blanks about just what had happened.
These images from 11:22 p.m. on May 19, 2022 are the last showing 6-year-old Eli Hart alive. In heartbreaking testimony today, Robert Pickerainen filled in gaps for the jury about what happened leading up to those images and what happened when Eli's mother, Julissa Thaler, returned to the apartment the next morning.
Initially, Robert was also arrested in connection with Eli's death, but his name was fully cleared and he was released without any charges. According to Robert, he and Julissa were acquaintances in high school, and they subsequently met up again in 2022. They sometimes took illicit substances together. Court records confirmed Ulissa's long history with illicit substances. This included the information that she was just 13 when she began drinking. By age 16, she was allegedly misusing opiates, and she was misusing sedatives by age 20. For these substance issues, she had been hospitalized more than once and had been sent to get treatment. At age 21, medical records show she was on LSD every day. This alleged substance use would remain an issue for her right up until the arrest for Eli's passing. During his court testimony, Robert said on May 19, 2022, which would be the last day of Eli's life, he and Julissa picked up Eli from school. Eli's last night was spent eating pizza and playing with kittens. However, things took a sinister turn. Julissa felt that Eli was getting too rowdy. The mother then began striking him, and Eli responded by striking her back. Robert said that following this incident, Julissa placed her shotgun in the car and then went back to the house. Robert, who was lying in Ulyss's bed at that time, said she then got Eli and went downstairs with him. When Robert woke up the next day, he asked Ulyssa where she went the night before. She responded that she had something to do. He noted that Eli wasn't home at the time and he had assumed that the child was simply at school. However, after police discovered Eli's body, they arrested Ulyssa along with Robert, although he had no idea what was going on. He also told the court that he had been with Ulyssa when she bought the shotgun and went with her when she worked on her shooting skills at a gun range. According to Robert, his partner had mentioned more than once that she wanted the shotgun for her own protection. He said that he never imagined she would use it on her own son. Robert's testimony proved to be very convincing, especially when other evidence backed up his story. The jury also heard from a DNA expert who said that Eli's blood was a match for the DNA in the blood found on Ulyssa's hair by police on May the 20th. In addition, the prosecution argued that the crime was premeditated, and they backed up this claim by stating that Ulyssa had conducted internet searches based around life insurance policies before the murder occurred.
Said leading up to the murder, Thaler had researched life insurance policies for Eli, searched Google for, quote, how much blood can a 6-year-old lose, and also purchased ammunition that she wanted to, quote, blow the biggest hole into something as proof the slaying was premeditated. Thaler's defense countered that the 28-year-old would not, could not, and did not kill her son, urging the jury to keep an open mind, assume nothing, and withhold judgment until it's time to deliberate.
During the sentencing hearing, both Josie, who was a woman engaged to Tori, and Nikita, Eli's foster mother, spoke about what a delightful boy Eli was. During Ulyssa's trial, her attorney Brian Leary alleged that her client wasn't the one who had shot Eli, although she did admit to taking part in her son's demise. However, the jury didn't buy that explanation. They subsequently found her guilty of her son's murder. When the judge gave Ulyssa the opportunity to make a few remarks during her sentencing, she simply chose to use an obscenity and insult the judge by calling him garbage, rather than to show any remorse or to admit her guilt.
Ms. Thaler, you have a right to speak this morning if you'd like. You don't have any obligation to speak, but if you'd like to choose to speak, now is the time to do it.
Yes, I would like to say something.
Go ahead.
I'm innocent. You all, you're garbage. That's all, Your Honor.
Ms. Thaler, I don't know that that's appropriate here.
Sorry, I told you what somebody else can.
Bottom line is that you are being sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, Ms. Thaler. I'm not going to close.
Ulyssa Thaler was sentenced to life in prison in February of 2023 without the possibility of parole.
Your Honor, everyone knows Eli Hart as the victim of this senseless and horrific crime. But Eli was so much more. Eli was an amazing 6-year-old boy who always woke up full of energy and laughter. He was kind, made friends easily, loved reading books. Eli had a love for animals that was very special. Eli explored, played outside, fished with his dad. Eli was an innocent, loving 6-year-old boy. He did not deserve this. Eli deserved to grow up and have a safe and happy life. We know these things about Eli because he was our little boy, our son, the center of our world. The little boy who would tell me not to be scared of bees, that they were nice and we need them. The little boy that loved being on his dad's shoulders. The little boy who, when we asked him, "Who loves you the most?" would always reply, "You both do." There are no more triple hugs, no more "I love you," no more memories to be made, just emptiness. Eli was a happy 6-year-old boy, our little boy, that we loved so deeply.
Step out! Get out! Get out! Put your hands back here.
My name is Wayne.
I don't care. Step to the rear of this vehicle.
In the name of who?
Chamber shots fired. Suspect down. Can you send me help?
This case is not a simple one, and it spans over nearly 20 years. It brings up a lot of questions and will definitely deliver some strong opinions. I simply ask you to please be thoughtful and take in all of the information provided before jumping into the comments. Leonard Cure was born in 1970 and grew up in Port Lucie with his mother Mary, along with 8 other siblings. Much of Leonard's early life remains pretty much a mystery, but what we do know is that things took a turn for the worse at age just 19. There, Leonard was arrested. He served time for charges of grand theft auto, of battery on a law enforcement officer, and an escape in Miami-Dade County, as well as an illicit substance-related charge in Hamilton County. After being released from this stint in prison, Leonard turned his life around. He got a stable job in construction and he had a girlfriend named Enid Roman. She was a proud mother of 3. All in all, Leonard seemed happy enough with his life. But everything would change once again on November the 10th, 2003. Leonard put his trust in the criminal justice system. However, he was arrested, jailed, and traumatized for a crime that he simply did not commit. Leonard was arrested on suspicion of committing an armed robbery. However, he believed because he was innocent that he would simply be let free, never be arrested, and certainly never be charged. 10 days before Leonard's arrest on November the 20th, 2003, an armed assailant robbed a Walgreens store. The man forced his way into the store in the early hours of the morning, and after threatening the employees, he made away with $1,700 in cash. Ashraf Rizk and Kathy Van Huysen were the only 2 employees who encountered the thief. Rizk shared a short conversation with him in the parking lot as he arrived at work. However, an altercation started when the assailant attempted to rob the store. Rizk stopped resisting after the man pulled a revolver. Van Huysen watched their confrontation and followed instructions when they were threatened. 2 days after the robbery, both witnesses sat with a sketch artist to establish a profile of the robber. Unfortunately though, both employees had contradicting descriptions of the thief. Van Huysen was convinced that the man had missing teeth on the left side of his mouth, while Rizk did not recall the man missing any teeth at all. Eventually, 6 suspects were gathered. These were selected, arguably unethically, by using the Track Repeat Arrestees program, or TRAP. Rizk then identified Leonard Cure and one other man, even though Rizk insisted that Leonard's complexion didn't quite match, essentially saying, well, it looks like him, but it's probably not. Cure was still arrested on November the 20th, 2003 for robbery and assault with a firearm. Leonard gladly cooperated. He knew he hadn't committed any crimes, so therefore he assumed the truth would come out eventually. What he hadn't counted on though was just how long that would take. Despite having no physical or forensic evidence to tie him to the scene of the crime, this was except inconclusive witness testimony from Rizk and a police officer who later came forward, the prosecution still pursued the case and it went to trial. What they hadn't been counting on was Leonard having a solid alibi. At around 6:52 AM when the robbery should have taken place, Cure was on the other side of town withdrawing from an ATM. Thankfully, he kept the receipts from this transaction. The security camera also recorded him withdrawing $20. By 7 AM, Cure was at his construction job, and there he'd clocked in with a handwritten signature. With a video alibi and provable timeline, it should have been simple to prove that Cure was innocent and to get the entire case dismissed, but that was not what happened. Leonard had terrible luck with his first attorney. He was stonewalled by the attorney's office, according to his brother Michael. They were not able to acquire the video evidence that proved Cure's innocence within the 90-day deadline for submission. Witnesses were called forward and arguments were made, but by August 17th, 2004, the jury could not come to a unanimous decision, so Leonard's case was declared a mistrial. The prosecution still offered Leonard a plea agreement for a guilty plea. This means he would have to spend 7 years in prison. Leonard understandably turned it down, maintaining that he was innocent. A second trial began a few weeks after the first, with Rizk as a centre. He testified that he was not sure if Cure was a man who robbed the store, but it was condemning enough for the jury to somehow reach a guilty verdict. This was even though the timeline didn't match and the witness said that Cure probably wasn't the man. They had a theory that Leonard used his girlfriend's car to rob the store, to withdraw from the ATM and somehow still make it to his construction job and sign a document on time. As ridiculous as all of this sounds to us, it was somehow enough to send Leonard Cure to life in prison for armed robbery with a firearm. He was transferred to different prisons all over the United States, and there, lovingly, his family still visited him several times a year. With the support of his family, Leonard appealed his case again and again, only to be denied at every turn. Leonard was in and out of isolation. He was assaulted and even persecuted for his faith. This is according to his mother. At times, she would even fear that her son was dead. Sometimes weeks or months would pass without any updates. However, throughout all of this hardship, Leonard and his family still never lost hope. Finally, in 2019, Leonard reached out to a recently formed conviction review unit that operated out of the 17th Judicial Circuit to request his case be re-investigated. Once his case was reviewed and the video evidence was finally shown, they reached out to the Innocence Project of Florida. Incredibly, on April 14th, 2020, Leonard walked out of prison as a free man with time served. The judge vacated his convictions months later on December the 11th, 2020. Leonard received compensation totaling $817,000 for his time spent in prison. Whilst this was obviously no substitute for the pain, grief and time lost, Leonard tried to start a new life. He acquired a home in Palmetto, and he even had plans to attend a college to study music production. So for the crime of doing absolutely nothing, Leonard wrongly spent 16 years trapped in prison. It's almost impossible to imagine the psychological and emotional impact that this would have on a human being. After regaining his freedom, Leonard attempted to rebuild his life, to create something worth living once more. By the time he came out of the other side, Leonard was older, irreverent of authority. He was a changed, broken man because of what had been done to him. However, it was said that he never lost his heart. He was charismatic, extremely intelligent, and he was a man of integrity, if nothing else, said Michael Cure, Leonard's older brother. He added, he had dreams, aspirations, and goals. Leonard now had a second attempt at a free life ahead of him. This is why it was so heartbreaking to see things go so very, very wrong. He spent a lot of time jetting between Georgia and Florida where his mother lived. And it was when he was on the interstate outside of Camden County when he ran into some trouble. A Camden County Sheriff's Office deputy pulled Leonard Cure over on Interstate 95 at about 7:30 a.m. on Monday, October the 16th, 2023. Leonard was on his way back from his mother's house in Florida after spending the weekend with her. This is a mixture of dashcam and bodycam footage of this altercation.
Speeds are 105. We're stopping Camden.
I'm clear off of that 20, returns to a white Subaru Forester.
10-4, change that IDA to a T-Tango. Step out! Get out! Get out! Put your hands back here.
I ain't
Get your damn hands back here. Dude,
Who are you?
Staff Sergeant Aldridge, Sheriff's Office.
My name is Wade.
I don't care. Step to the rear of this vehicle.
In the name of who?
In the name of the law of the state of Georgia. Step back here now or you're getting tased.
I'm going. Watch me now.
Put your hands on the back of that truck.
Do you see that?
Put your hands on the back of that truck.
The back of the truck.
Both hands. Turn around. 34, can you send me another unit? One non-compliant.
Your name is Officer who?
Staff Sergeant Aldridge with the Camden County Sheriff's Office.
Who county?
Camden County. Put your hand behind your back.
Do I have a warrant? Wait. No. Excuse me.
Either put your hands behind your back or you're getting tased. I'm telling you that right now.
Why am I getting tased?
Because you are under arrest for speeding and reckless driving.
I'm not driving. Nobody was hurt. How was I speeding?
You passed me doing 100 miles an hour.
Okay, so that's a speeding ticket, right?
Sir, tickets in the state of Georgia are criminal offenses.
I don't have a ticket in Georgia.
You do now?
Why?
You passed me doing 100 miles an hour.
Offense, and what? Am I going
Hands
to jail?
behind your back. Yes, you are going to jail. Hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
Clearly overpowered, Officer Aldridge pulled out his pistol and fired. The projectile punctured Cure's lungs and he went down immediately. He began to flail and wave his hands and even attempt to climb back to his feet. The police officer yelled, "Stay down and don't get back up." Officer Aldridge grabbed his radio, which he had dropped during the exchange, and he called in the incident. He was now panting and leaning against his car. When a Brink security guard driving an armoured car showed up to support him, he gave him the space he needed to cuff Leonard, who was still on the floor at this stage.
Camden shots fired. Suspect down. Can you send me help? Stay down. Stay down. Stay down. Camden, are you clear? Stay down! Do not get up!
You alright? You got backup coming?
Yeah. Cover him.
The police officer rushed to retrieve the first aid kit and a pocket defibrillator. This was when he noticed that Cure's eyes had stopped moving.
Hey, you look at me. You ain't going no damn where.
Backup arrived moments later, and Aldridge, alongside several first responders, tried to administer first aid. But Leonard had stopped breathing completely. They now tried CPR, but Leonard never came back. Officer Aldridge broke down into tears. He finally understood that he had taken someone's life. News of Leonard's death rippled out through the internet. Full details of just what had happened hadn't yet been released. 2 days after news broke of his death, Leonard's family assembled in front of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation office with a clear intention to pursue justice. All of the family members expressed their outrage at what had happened. Mary Cure spoke of finding out about her son's death. As soon as the police arrived at her home, she already knew that her son was dead. The police killed him, she said, even before the first officer got a word out. For years, she and Leonard had lived in fear. His time in prison changed him, ingraining in him a deep distrust and fear of the system. Frankly, an understandable one. His mother said he was not the same for years after coming home. Alongside the family was a notable civil rights lawyer, Ben Crump. Before viewing the dashcam and bodycam footage captured by Deputy Sergeant Aldridge on Wednesday, there was a consensus among the family that the deputy was aggressive, that he had simply failed to de-escalate the encounter. Whatever happened out there, we don't believe that he deserved to die, Mary Cure said. When a reporter asked about Leonard's alleged refusal to cooperate, Ben Crump answered, "When you've been wrongfully convicted, and then they're talking about taking you back to that cage. It's psychological at that point."
That's right, Anthony. I talked to the family right after they watched that video. His brothers were saddened and just wished that the encounter had ended differently, though they did say that they felt like the deputy approached Leonard Cure aggressively when he stepped out of his patrol car and started yelling at him. They say the thought of going back to jail probably triggered Leonard, and that's why he stopped cooperating during that traffic stop. His mother, Mary Cure, stood with Leonard's siblings chanting "Justice for Leonard" right across from the sheriff's office. His mother reflected on how during that time she drove back and forth to visit him in prison. She says she fought for him then and she'll get justice for him now. His brother Michael says he believes Leonard should still be alive.
He was a man of integrity, if nothing else. My brother mattered to us. That's right. He had dreams, aspirations, and goals. He did not deserve to die. Was he an angel? Was he perfect? Absolutely not. But whatever it is he did, it did not warrant him being dead.
Not long after that conference, the dashcam footage was released on the internet. The internet, though, as it always did, commented on their behalf. People fell into two categories. At this time in civilization, human beings are increasingly polarized and more extreme. There were those who supported Leonard Cure and his family, and there were others who maintained that Cure was wrong to resist his arrest and to assault the police officer. The Camden County Sheriff's Office provided a statement to go with the dash and body cam footage. The video showed that law enforcement is transparent regarding the actions that occurred on Monday morning, including the dash camera video of the truck speeding in excess of 100 miles per hour and being operated in a reckless manner. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation has begun looking into the matter and has placed Sergeant Aldridge on administrative leave for the duration of the investigation. It was later revealed that Buck Aldridge had previously been terminated from the Kingsland Police Department in Georgia for violating their use of force policy.
This is Camden County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Deputy Buck Aldridge. He was the deputy involved in Monday's deadly traffic stop. His career with the Kingsland Police Department began in 2012 as a peace officer. An employee performance review in June of 2013 said he needed improvement on his judgment and decision making. The comment underneath says, "Be calm, cool, collected." The next year, Aldridge gets a warning for unnecessary force during a traffic stop. In his 5 years at Kingsland PD, he's completed 618 hours of training, including de-escalation techniques, use of deadly force, traffic stops, and more. In August 2017, he's fired for violating use of force policy during a traffic stop. In an internal investigation, another officer involved in that stop said he thought it was a bit much. Another said in part, "I see a police officer being way too aggressive to start with. He had no business picking her up and throwing her on the ground."
Mark Bowman, a crime analyst for First Coast News, has come out to say that he believes that Leonard Cure could have come out of the confrontation alive, but only if both men had handled things very differently. He said, "Things fall apart when Aldridge said you're going to jail. He knows nothing about Cure. Cure's done 16 years in prison, wrongfully, so he's going to have a problem with trusting authority." The Camden County Sheriff's Office was well aware of Buck's past when they hired him in 2022. Bowman said that the way Aldridge stepped out of his car Aggressively yelling at Cure set the tone for their entire interaction. He said he used verbal commands poorly, but he did use them. He also uses the taser, which is less than lethal, but it doesn't work. And now he's to the point where he has somebody crushing his throat, and he's extracting a round and firing it. Bowman thinks that the district attorney's office will rule that the shooting was justified, and they won't press criminal charges because of the moves that Aldridge took before resorting to discharging his weapon. But he thinks that the matter won't end there, especially with a civil rights lawyer representing the family. From the civil aspect, the situation plays out a lot different. They'll put into question his training, whether or not he followed proper protocol, along with incidents in the past. Time will tell if the Cure family will find the justice and compensation that they demand. As of early 2024, Leonard Cure's family are filing a $16 million lawsuit against Staff Sergeant Buck Aldridge and the Camden County Sheriff's Office. Please do let me know your thoughts on this complex case down in the comments. What do you think can be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Please do let me know. If you appreciate my work here, please do hit that like button. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.